Hi everyone, hope you are feeling positive and healthy. Please subscribe with bell notifications if you haven't already, and please don't hesitate to leave your valuable feedback and advice below. Thank you very much. Let's jump into the stories. Am I the unreasonable one for letting my nephew call me dad? I, 30 years old male, was really close to my sister growing up. She was 7 years younger than me, but we weren't close to our parents, so I took on a parental role with her. When she turned 18, she moved across the country and cut contact with both myself and my parents after getting into a big fight with my parents. I was upset, but I understood that she wanted a new life. A year later, I got a call saying that she had had a baby and that she was missing, so I immediately flew across the country. I did my best to take care of her baby with the help of her best friend, but she was never found and eventually pronounced dead. That was about 4 years ago. A few months after my sister was declared dead, I officially decided to move to the city she had been living in. I got a job and got into a relationship with her friend, and together we raised my nephew. I fought with my parents quite a bit about this as they wanted to adopt the baby, but I knew my sister would want me to raise him, and eventually my parents also agreed. When the baby started talking, he always referred to me and my partner as dad/daddy, and we never corrected him as he was just a baby/toddler. However, now that he's a bit older, a few people, my parents and some friends, have said that we should teach the baby to call us as uncles rather than dads because we're not his real parents. I feel like I am his father. I've raised him since he was 6 months old, and my partner has been there since the day he was born. However, I do feel guilty because his true parent is my sister, and if anything he should call her mom. He knows about her and knows she was his mother and that she is no longer with us, but it's hard to explain to a 4-year-old. Am I the unreasonable one for letting my nephew call me/my partner dad rather than uncle? Also, for some reason when I try to reply to comments it gets deleted, but thanks for all of the answers and advice. Not the unreasonable one, period. Obama once said that it's not the ability to make a child that makes you a father, but the ability to raise one. This also applies here. You may not have made this baby, but damn straight you're his daddy. Uncles are the people who show up on holidays and give money and candy and then disappear till the next holiday. You've earned the title daddy and you deserve it. You're raising this kid. He calls you daddy because you have and always will be there for him. You're a good man for taking on your sister's kid. As a sister of someone, I would be more than thankful for a brother like you. You're a good dad for staying with your son after the crisis was over and making him your own. Not the unreasonable one. What do you think adoptive parents let their kids call them? You're this kid's father figure. A dad is who raises you. Am I the unreasonable one for pulling my daughter out of mom's dance studio? My mom is a dance teacher. She put me in dance classes from a young age, and I enjoyed it at first, but then I began to compete in actual competitions and it caused some serious health issues for me. I was anxious, I developed an eating disorder, and my self-esteem crashed, and between classes and home there was no escape from mom, who at one point had me and my sister practice for 8 hours a day in the name of winning a competition. I have a daughter, age 10. When she was about 5, her friends started dance lessons at my mother's studio, the only local studio at the time. I agreed to enroll my daughter in mom's studio on the condition that she didn't compete, just learned, which mom agreed to, but by the time my daughter was 8, mom approached me saying that my daughter is really good. Everyone else in her class is going to this competition, and mom thinks it would be good for her. My daughter begged me to let her compete, so I agreed. She's done about 6 competitions so far. They all went fine. Her positions in order were 6th, 2nd, 1st, 2nd. I am immensely proud of her, and I've told her so, but after that latest result my 10-year-old had a full-on panic attack because she felt like a second meant she was getting worse, and she called herself a loser. I called mom and asked her to give her my daughter a few words of encouragement, but mom said she would do no such thing because second place isn't something to be celebrated after 3 first places, and my mom wasn't going to pretend it was okay. I asked mom what exactly she said to my daughter post results, and mom admitted she said basically that to my daughter after she was announced second. I hung up, and when my daughter calmed down she confirmed that she felt good about it until nanny called me a loser. I emailed the studio in a professional manner saying that I didn't think they were the right fit for my daughter, so she would no longer be attending. I am planning on enrolling her in a relatively new studio that has just opened up and doesn't do competitions. I ran this decision by my daughter first. Aside from worrying that her nan might be upset with her, she's fine with this and thinks the new studio might be a good idea, helped by one of her closest friends going there. Mom, however, has said she can't believe I'm doing this to her and I need to unquit her studio, saying that she was honest with my daughter. It's a competitive environment, She needs to take criticism, and how do I expect my daughter to grow as a dancer if I pull her out at the first tantrum? I talked to my sister about it, as she's the only one who really knows what mom does to the same extent as me, and she said I hate to admit it, but mom's right, and went on to say that if my daughter wants to dance then she might need to get competitive every now and then, and I can't protect her from everything. Am I the unreasonable one for pulling her out? Not the unreasonable one. This is about your daughter and her ongoing mental health, not her grandmother's ego or expectations. I grew up in a household like that, and at 36 I still deal with self-esteem issues. Especially if your daughter wants to go, well, that's all that matters. Not the unreasonable one. The world of competitive dance is a really intense place to grow up. I did competitive dance growing up, although I started dance a bit late. 12. It takes so much time out of your life. Luckily for me, I was put on the second tier set of lines. My studio had 2 tracks, the elite track and the secondary track, although they never described them that way, it was obvious. The girls on that elite tier spent all their time dancing, and for many of them, it became their whole life. They didn't have an identity outside of dance. I think you're making the right decision. Let her learn to dance in an environment without so much pressure. She should do it because it is fun and she likes it, but winning competitions shouldn't be her whole identity and goal. Also, I would also add, that if you can find a studio like mine where the secondary tier exists and competes, it could be a good middle ground. I had so much fun and we went to competitions, but there wasn't any pressure since the reputation of the studio was set by the elite tier. Am I the unreasonable one for being upset about food being taken off of my plate? This sounds ridiculous, but here goes. I, 26 years old female, will be eating sometimes, lunch or dinner, and my husband, 26 years old male, or our son, 18 meters, if they aren't eating or have already finished, will take food off of my plate and feed it to our dog. It happened last night. I am a slow eater and finished after my husband. We were talking while I finished and he grabbed a piece of chicken from my plate and tossed it to the dog. I asked him why he would do that and he just laughed. I don't think he understood that it actually bothered me, but his reaction made me feel like I was being crazy. But just now, I was eating lunch. We are all working from home / schooling hasn't started, when my son came in and scooped up some of my chips and fed them to the dog. Again, I was upset, so I asked why he would do that. His reaction was the same, that it was funny and he didn't think I actually cared. I feel like an a-hole, but also, I don't like that they keep taking food from my plate. It wouldn't ever even cross my mind to take food from their plates. Also, they do this all the time, but usually to eat it themselves, and I didn't mind as much before because I want them to be full. But the dog has food and table food isn't good for his stomach anyway, so that seems to bother me even more. I don't know. Am I an a-hole? Added to add, son is 18 years old and adopted. Sorry, I should have clarified. Not the unreasonable one. They're feeding it to the dog? That is incredibly disrespectful to you, and not funny at all. The fact that they find it funny when it clearly upsets you is really something. And the fact that your son has picked up on this behavior is concerning. You should put your foot down and tell them you do care, that it isn't funny to you, and that even if it seems trivial to them, you don't want them to take your food to feed to the dog. They can use their own food. Honestly, I would also bring up that it isn't even good for the dog. NTA, NTA, NTA. Not the unreasonable one. This sounds like a serious lack of boundaries and respect for you from your son and husband. I understand wanting to make sure they are full, but I think they're old enough to get themselves more food. That's not on your plate. If they're still hungry, crap, the least they could do is ask you if you're done with your food before they snatch it from you. Am I the unreasonable one for speaking English to my daughter? My partner Dee's first language is French and mine is English. We live in France and I speak French, but my family, who don't live here, don't. Because of this, we're raising our daughter bilingually. Dee only speaks to her in French, I only speak to her in English. She's just over a year old and obviously isn't really speaking yet. We had been spending a few days visiting Dee's family because it was his grandmother's 80th birthday. His family is big and we were around 30 people, some of whom I haven't met before. Everyone was outside, drinking, eating, chatting. I was with my daughter, feeding her and chatting with some of Dee's cousins. Dee was off playing a game. While I was at the table, I was interacting with his cousins in French, but whenever I said something my daughter, I would say it in English. It was all very basic and I wasn't conversing or gossiping with her. She's not a great conversation partner, imagine that. I would say things like oops, you dropped X, or you really like those tomatoes. Later, I went to change my daughter in the house. As I was doing so, one of Dee's aunts, who I had never met before, walked into the bathroom where we were. As soon as I heard the door open, I said I'm in here. I didn't think to lock the door, because I wasn't in the main bathroom, but a secondary one that I assumed nobody would use. His aunt saw me and gave me the dirtiest look imaginable and said, "So you do know how to speak French?" I had no idea what to say to this, so I just stammered out an yes. Before she began ranting at me about how rude and disrespectful it is for me to speak English to my daughter, how I could be saying anything to her, how we're in France and I should make more of an effort to speak French, how I shouldn't be trying to confuse my daughter with two languages at once because she'll never become good at either of them, etc. I was shocked and honestly panicking a bit. I told her I wanted to change my daughter and could she please use the bathroom downstairs. She glared and left. I have some anxiety issues and I'm not a confrontational person, so I was shaking a bit at this point. I went to find D immediately and told him exactly what happened. He was pissed and ready to find his aunt to tell her off. I tried to tell him not to do that. I didn't want to cause a fuss at the party, but he was fuming and wouldn't listen. I didn't follow him, so I don't know exactly what was said, but when he got back he told me to get my things. We were leaving. His parents asked us what was going on and they were horrified when we explained, but one of his cousins, not a child of his aunt, who was nearby overheard, and in no uncertain terms told us he agreed with his aunt, and that we were being doubly rude to leave and ruin the party. So, am I the unreasonable one for speaking to my daughter in English when around a group of people who only speak French? It's wild to me how this is a thing. Tell your aunt she sounds American and that surely will shut her the F up. You speak English, so what? You want to raise your daughter bilingual, so what? Considering you're in Europe, that shouldn't be so shocking. Your husband speaks to her in French, so what's the deal? Considering you also speak French, this ain't needs to check herself. Your daughter will only benefit from learning more than one language. You are doing your daughter a service. Never forget this. Hopefully you will find strength in this and keep moving forward. Someday maybe your daughter will know several languages because you have taught her the importance of understanding others and giving her the tools to be fluent in more than one language. I wish my parents had been like you. Find support where you can and never stop doing what you're doing. Not the unreasonable one. Good on you and your partner for raising your daughter to be bilingual. The faster she learns English, the better her English will be. Would I be the unreasonable one for calling the cops on my mom, potentially getting her deported? I read it. Throw away it because I don't want this linked to my main. My mom, 45 years old female, came to the US from southern Mexico with my dad, 47 years old male, when they were teens, and a couple years after that they had me, 25 years old male. Because I was born here, I am a citizen, but my parents were still undocumented until they went to DACA and obtained green cards. One of the conditions of it is that you can't be convicted of a crime. My mom has always been a narcissist, making everything about herself. I basically raised myself as she wasn't always there, and my dad worked a ton to provide for us, bless his soul. When I was in high school, I asked my mom to drive me and my girlfriend to senior prom, and she agreed, but backed out on the day of, causing us to be an hour late. When I got pissed, she called me ungrateful and other names, and that I didn't appreciate her. This isn't the only incident, but it's the one I remember most. When I moved away for college, she demanded I called her every day, and when I didn't, she called the cops for a wellness check. After that I went minimal contact with her. Recently, she called the cops saying that my current girlfriend was abusive. Not true. She never met her, and I got extremely pissed off and told her not to contact me again. Now to the a-hole part. I came home from work, essential worker, and my mom was sitting on my couch. I demanded to know how she got in, and she said she let herself in with the key under my doormat. I told her to GTFO pretty harshly, and she told me dad lost his job and they're gonna be homeless soon. I told her that I didn't give a F and to get out. After she left, I noticed my expensive watch was missing, 150 used. My dad got it for me for my graduation, and when I asked her about it, she said that I owe it to her and that I was her son. I demanded she give it back, and she said she already sold it. Would I be the unreasonable one if I filed a police report on her for this behavior? There is a very high chance that she would be deported back to Mexico and not have a chance to come back here. Also, I have informed her that she has 48 hours to get my watch back, or I will go to the police and report her. She started crying and told me that she sold it, and I told her that she needs to get it back ASAP. She tried to say that their financial state is my fault, but I shut her down and told her to get me the watch, then I am going to file a restraining order. She started saying something, but I hung up. My dad later texted me and said that I hurt my mom, and I told him that she brought this upon herself. Also, I'll try to respond to comments, but I can't get them all. Edit 2. Many people are suggesting I cut her off. I've done this before, and she found my new phone and address, along with some social media. I don't want to move because I live in a good part of town for a residence price. I also can't get my locks changed per apartment rules, but I'll try to do it anyway. I've also been informed that my dad may have lied about his immigration status, as they were too old for DACA and it doesn't give green cards. Another user pointed this out, and I texted my dad to call me when he has a chance so I can tell him. Yes, you're the unreasonable one. You're gonna get a whole lot of people telling you that you have every right to call the cops, and it will be true. But you have to consider who is really going to bear the brunt of the consequences for this. And that's probably going to be your dad. The guy who has worked so hard to provide for you, and who gave you the watch in the first place. Even though he won't be the one deported, it'll be a big disruption in his life. There will probably be legal issues that will take time and money to deal with, etc., etc. For your dad's sake, let the watch go, cut your mom off entirely, and hide your key in a less dumb place. While that's very tough, I'd say the crime doesn't quite match the punishment. But then again, it sounds like she's been causing issues for you your entire life. Perhaps instead of immediately taking the nuclear option, you could warn her first, return the watch and never contact me again. Or I'm calling the cops. Also, something to keep in mind is that this may impact your father as well, who it seems like you don't have an issue with. Not the unreasonable one so long as you give her a warning. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.